I got people telling me now, emailing me, there's town trucks dumping there. Why are they dumping anything there?
The town trucks are in fact dumping debris out there because there's no place else to put the trees that fell down from Sandy because we don't get to use the parking lot up at exit 53.
Put them in Stony Creek.
Yeah.
Put them in Pine Orchard.
If we own parcels in anywhere in town, we
Well, you shouldn't even own this one.
Why not?
Because you took it from the guy irresponsibly for bad reasons.
Who did? The town of Brantford acting over 10 years. Everybody acted unanimously.
But it wasn't the reason they took the property was because it's contaminated. Now you want to put public people on it.
It is contaminated. We're having all these discussions, folks, and I just assume you come and ask me 10,000 questions so that you know.
So how do we stop it? What's the way to get it?
How to stop
Public Works from going on through the property?
I just have a question. Did you just say the property is contaminated?
It is contaminated.
And I'll just say this, I've read 20 years worth of well monitoring reports that are in boxes because we've been testing this stuff since 1993.
The Tabor property is contaminated.
And down here in north of the dump in the blue, yes, it most certainly is. And the wells support that and they're monitored and checked monthly since
What about the remaining
1993.
70 acres? That's not good. You're talking about a very, very small area that may have contamination that can be
That's
remediated.
immediately next to a residential area. And
Wait a minute. You're right. That's the discussion. That is next to a residential area here, the Pine Orchard. And to take that property and think that this is the ideal spot to put a commercial building, okay? These people have suffered enough with this, okay? You guys want to put instead of a commercial building, there's other spots, and if it costs the town more money, so be it. Let's start picking people over buildings. Let's start picking people over trails.
And those were the considerations made.
There are people here with signs with schools, okay? They've got issues. You saw what happened in Newtown. They have issues. And we're talking about this place over here? Come on.
So the reason why he wants to use the property is because he bought it for whatever unknown reason, and now he's trying to find a use for the property.
No.
So let me just finish. So there's already commercial
The 2008
lots
plan
that
of
are already-
conservation development that was passed by the town after a series of 7 meetings prior to Unk getting reelected in 2007. But the plan of conservation and development from 2008 specifically locates public works at Tabor, specifically in 5 or 6 different places in the plan. That plan was put together with having at least 7 meetings of the public, one of which had 400 folks over at the intermediate school to develop, and every 10 years by statute, or every 10 years or so, we have to have a plan of conservation development. The 1997 plan of conservation development said, oh yeah, we got to have a new public works building and a new fire.
16 years.
But in
They couldn't get it done.
What does that have to do with any of us?
All
My
of
childhood weren't
but
even born yet.
you say he is the one person has decided to make this decision. In fact, it has been.
You can't look me in the eye. Can you look up here?
No, I'm just getting excited.
All right. I'm wondering if you believe in what you're saying.
I just need to clarify one thing, because this 2008, but go back to 2003 when you were asking when the property was taken, and it was specifically asked by a resident in this neighborhood if it would be used for industrial use, and the first selectman said no, the town would not use it for industrial use.
Shouldn't be. It's not an industrial area.
Oh, okay. That makes sure that we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what it is.
I'm just
Let's
saying,
clarify that John Opie took the property.
yeah,
John Opie took the property, not Uncle Ross.
And
Let's not clarify that.
there was a
Yes, it is.
meeting here on May 5th, 2008, and this was also discussed, specifically the placement of
it's not
public
about
works.
going after
Selectmen.
the
votes were taken with
who was
Unk.
there or not.
It's
If you wanna
the
get
fact
into-
that we don't want it.
But when we took the property, the residents were told it would not be used for industrial use. It doesn't make sense. There hasn't been an argument presented yet that says this is the best use for this land as industrial use. Okay,
That's not- Jamie, that's
the
not
argument.
true.
And then when we talk about the
It's
price,
just not
saying
true.
let's choose people over dollars. Well, the fact of the matter, to put Tabor down here is going to cost us more than if it's going to we put it into one of these industrial areas. So, I mean, this, but you know,
Andy,
right,
but
no,
Andy,
I
that's
know.
what I'm saying. I'm going to say from my heart. It looks like our town has lost its vision, okay? It looks like people who run our town are short-sighted, have no long-range plans. You quote
This
about
is a 10-year
2000.
plan.
No, but-
This is a 10-year plan that's finally being enacted because the dump has been closed.
But
Rick.
for 10 years,
and I
people
invite you to
object-
come
but-
ask these
But for
questions.
10 years, people have objected. For 10 years,
That's
they
not
have not
true.
listened.
On May 5th, 2008, there was a meeting here
Yeah.
with 50 residents
Right.
from Tabor that was held specifically here, and these exact questions were brought up.
And what
I have
happened?
minutes from that meeting,
All right, well,
and people
2012.
did not object to it because
So-
at the time, these exact questions about running trucks down Arc and Market and the
Andy,
traffic
hold on.
issues, and these were addressed, Fred.
Thursday, I was coming down Mount Louise. A town truck with a backhoe came out of Tool. Unk said at that meeting on the 19th, they should never do that. Even if they put signs there, we're going to do it. It's, you know what? No one believes you guys anymore. You've lost your credibility. That's the problem. Whether you're right or wrong, you have lost credibility with voters. How?
Your master
How?
plan,
Because
because
every
every
time-
arc being cut off in your master plan, arc was still wide open when I looked at it.
Do you know that they're both doing
It's
Irene
cut off,
and,
they're gonna
and
use it
Sandy?
now. They're gonna
this-
use Arc Road to do it. I saw it last Saturday. The truck came down Arc Road, came up this way, it was a red truck, town truck, had stumps
On
in
a
the truck.
Saturday.
On a Saturday morning, or Friday, I don't remember, I was on vacation all last week. It was a morning last week, up this way, in that way. I stood there with this dog. He dumped a bunch of stumps, came out empty, came up Arc. They're gonna do it. We don't believe that it's not going to be. They're going to use Arc Road. They're going to.
Andy, listen, maybe you're being.
You can't get out over here with a high tide. You can't even get past over here. Have you ever driven down here at high tide, at a full moon high tide?
Oh, yeah, I got that.
Yeah, you can't get out. And then Irene and Sandy, you
is why
can't even
they-
get off of this land. There's no way out.
I understand these concerns because I've been hearing them, and I've been listening to them. And I
don't care about.
Oh no, I most certainly do, which is why we're having these discussions and we're engineering these plans to try to address these issues specifically. Okay, and to take the traffic off of the bottom of Tabor Drive in the residential area, that's been expressed as a priority for a lot of folks. And in fact, this engineered plan right now addresses that specifically. There won't be any more traffic at the end of Tabor Drive.
Andy, but what
Because it's
you're
cutting in.
doing is you're trying to divide and conquer the issue. Here's the problem. It's not about the street. That's one issue. We'll fix it. I think that here's the issue.
Fred, the placement of public works at this site puts the building 1/4 mile from the nearest residence. And we don't have that ability to do that anywhere
But
else
it
in
doesn't
town.
put
On-
the
whether it's
trucks-
a private parcel or a town.
But it doesn't put the trucks and the traffic and all the other mayhem it creates 1/4 mile from any house. It puts it in front of their houses.
You say mayhem, and I don't know exactly what that means.
What that means? Why
Mayhem?
don't you stay here someday?
Because you've said Newtown and mayhem now, Fred, and how am I supposed
No,
to
no,
know?
no, 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 no. Listen, my point to you about Newtown is this. There are people here that don't want here, has nothing to do with they want money spent somewhere else. So what I'm saying is this is more than just a neighborhood issue. This becomes a town issue. People are saying, you want to spend $20 million? They want you to spend $20 million on a new school. Why? That you should ask them. I'm not here to represent them. They have their point of view on it. I didn't know they're here. They're welcome to be here. If they can ask you a question, by all means do it. I'm just telling you something. Your administration has lost credibility with voters. And it's not just a road, because you want to fix a road, but we don't want a building back there, period. That's the issue. That's the big, big issue. So whatever you do to do what you say is going to happen, it's irrelevant, okay? Saying that we're going to put trails there is not going to, yeah, you know what you're doing? You're saying, hey, people who are
Trail's
agreeing.
already there.
So why are you walking it today? What's your function of walking that
I was
trail?
invited.
You were? Yeah, okay. So it's better you met with us than be with them. There's nothing you can tell them. Chet Bloomquist knows more about those trails, I'm sure, than you do. Here are people standing around, have legitimate questions, and you're going to walk a trail. We don't care about it.
Because all those people have questions too, and I actually intend to answer all their questions too. And I came here specifically to answer questions.
Listen,
It's far easier to do when we're actually on the property with a personal knowledge of the property, because I'd really like to walk around and point out, even on the prettiest part, the trail next to the pond, there are enormous concrete Jersey barriers.
but
And
that's neither here. Take them away. Get rid of them.
But this town will not spend, because they haven't spent any money to clean this up in the last 10 years.
Whose
And
fault is that? Ours? Did we do anything wrong?
Talk
Did all
to
you
your-
people pay your taxes?
I don't know.
Did you pay your taxes? Did you get your money's worth? Because they haven't. That's our issue.
You haven't gotten their money's worth.
What?
How?
Look, you're complaining about barriers over there that they're stacked up there. What do we do? Supposed to go there and take them out ourselves? You're the guys who are in charge of it. You take them out. If they don't belong there, then get rid of them. But if you're getting rid of Jersey barriers and dumping stumps, there's something wrong with that picture. There really is. You can't make a case for that, Andy. You can't. You can't.
People have been on our road, what we put up with on this street, and I was lucky. I didn't experience it, but my neighbors talked about sofas being left in the middle of the street, brush, pine trees, whatever else people were hauling to the dump. It's been years and years of torture on this street alone.
Because in the morning, you hear those trucks too,
a trailer
and
park
you see
in
them
the middle
dropping stuff.
Of a truck
If you
stop,
hear
a
them
stop
run
and shop,
because
a
they
Dunkin'
speed.
Donuts, a car dealership, and everything else.
Yeah, because we're at the
It's
bus
just
stop
hardly
going to
affected
school.
like
So.
we would be. We put up with it enough. You have a place already in town. It's the transfer station. There's a lot of land there.
Yeah, why can't it go up there?
That land, because it's privately owned,
You can buy it.
and on one side of the transfer station, there's already a deal in place, and so that's how.
What about across the
and
street
the-
on Baldwin
behind
Drive?
Is
the
that a deal
trans-
to build houses there? At the transfer station?
No,
Mansions?
no, I think it's the new army spot.
But they're not going to take 153 acres to build an army thing.
How much did they pay for that, Andy?
We can get it by eminent domain. We've done that before.
I don't have, there's a
It's
private
eminent domain.
transaction between a
There's no
landowner
idea.
and somebody who wants to buy it, and
So it's not closed yet.
You know, I just
I don't
want to
think
say
it's close.
something to people.
So there's a
About-
possibility of putting in an offer.
Yeah, there's possible. But the, you know, as an
Yes.
elected
There's
official,
industrial first.
you know, when you're trying to make these decisions, and now we have a need for public works. And I said this at the last selectmen's meeting, and it's true. It's a balancing act. You have to take into consideration the neighbors that you're affecting. You have to think about the overall budget, how that's going to have impact the taxpayers throughout the entire town. And then you have to think of the needs of the Public Works Department. And, you know, they're in a facility which they shouldn't have been put in to begin with. It's, you know, isn't meeting their needs. Placing Public Works down here fails on all three of those. It negatively impacts the residents. It's going to have a huge impact on the taxpayers. And if the town's going to do the work they said, the infrastructure work, to put Public Works down here and then build the facility so it doesn't impact you like they're telling you, then you're talking about years before Public Works is going to be put down there, and they're still. So on all three of those areas where you need to do a balancing act, this is a terrible plan, terrible location.
And I think everybody knows that. It's just a matter of.
And I'll just say that I specifically disagree with, after we went 1, 2, and 3, because I was agreeing with 1, 2, and 3, and the residential impact and the long-term planning here is critically important. And in fact, we have looked at all sorts of sites. I got maps of all the sites that have been looked at here. And unfortunately, in my analysis, because I'm just one of 3 guys voting on a board, in my analysis, and just so we're clear, I've been hiking Tabor for 10 years, long
I
before
know.
Public Works was back when they still had their old Public Works. But it just so happens that the Public Works came up and said, okay, this is the Public Works Building Committee, after doing their work for 2 years, came back and said, this is the site that is best for all the sites that we've evaluated. And I do think that all of these, the residential impact and the long-term planning and the cost, actually is best. It is best when it's placed here. That's the decision that I made, and I stand by it, because.
Okay, well, I think then that's where you lose your credibility.
Okay, that's fine.
That's where you
Now,
lose
I'll
your
say
credibility
this.
with voters.
What
Selectman
are the other
Cosgrove
sites
has
that were
previously
evaluated?
advocated for Northeast Industrial Road. In my mind, that's an absolutely atrocious idea, and environmentally, it is terribly unsound.
Can you
explain
that, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, because this place is
Yeah,
I would love to hear why that's so atrocious.
putting a
And
salt
where is
dome.
the residence there? There's no residence near that.
Marbar. Back into Marbar is right across the river.
All right, let's
It's about 500 feet
There's
away.
no trucks. They over the river. We'll finish this first. Go ahead.
But, I mean, we can't say trucks aren't going to be an issue up there, but they would be an issue down here. Because in fact, if the trucks are going to be an issue,
They're
they're
not
going
gonna
to
drive
be an
across the river. The trucks don't drive. Go ahead. Answer this question.
issue. But to answer your question, Alex, where's Alex? Okay, Alex asked the question. But Northeast Industrial Road, I evaluated very poorly primarily because it's located right on the Branford River in a floodway, not just a floodplain, but in a floodway, which means the water actually crosses the property on the northwest corner of that. And it's only 5.1 acres, but you take out the floodway and it's actually much too small to locate. And especially the salt dome that is part of the Public Works facility would be a very, very, very big environmental disaster, given the historical flooding on that property, which reaches 3 to 4 feet above the property line. 3 to 4 feet of flooding there from inland flooding, and it's happened several times in the last 2 decades. Several times. This is bedrock up here. The proposed placement up here is on bedrock at 26 feet above sea level, which is in fact higher than Northeast Industrial Road. And now, here we're talking about coastal flooding. Up there we're primarily talking about inland flooding. But over the next 50 years, I think we can't put anything at a low elevation. I've got concerns about putting anything below 10 or 15 feet above sea level, just given our history with Sandy and Irene. And this new thing called a surge that, quite frankly, has affected all of us, but especially down here. But the Northeast Industrial Road property actually is more expensive, according to the folks who looked at it, more expensive to rehabilitate that property. And we wouldn't get full functionality out of it, because every couple of years it's going to flood and it's going to be standing in a couple
Isn't that a
feet of
100-year
water.
floodplain there? I think that's what they said. It's a 100-year floodplain.
It's a floodway, and in the last 2 decades, it's flooded several feet above the property level.
And you're saying there's no way to remediate that?
It's on the Branford River. How are we gonna? And building a salt dome that's gonna get wet, that's gonna kill everything downstream.
Why don't we do what you said? Why don't we elevate that area?
I'll also
4 or
say
5
this:
feet? We don't have to worry
Northeast
about it.
Industrial Road. Northeast Industrial Road has been owned by 3 corporate organizations that I don't think are actively functioning in the state of Connecticut right now. There's currently there are lots of reports about the documented environmental spills on that property, such that is classified by the state of Connecticut as an it's an establishment, which means under the Connecticut Transfer Act, which is transferring contaminated properties. That property in Northeast Industrial Road has been red flagged for a long time, and they've had so many discharges into the ground there. Now, up here we're building on bedrock at 23 feet. That's 21 feet elevation there, and it's coarse gravel and sand that goes down 15 feet to the bedrock, which means we're buying a dry tea bag full of chemicals on Northeast Industrial Road that's too small, and it also putting a salt
Let me just say
dome
one
on
thing.
that.
Let me just say
And-
this.
Wait, Fred. You asked. The
No, I
question
didn't
was
ask
asked.
for-
The question was asked, and,
Okay, all
and
right.
with all due respect,
You're losing everybody, though. That's all. You want
Well, I
to
know-
talk,
I
you
already
talk.
lost
You have no
everybody I was
clue what you're talking about because you're getting
Wait,
too technical.
which is why I'd like you all to walk with me.
No, we're not walking. Listen, that's not going to happen.
This is information that I've handed out to everybody. I'd love to leave it right.
Andy, I want to leave you just with one last thought. You know what? If you create a building that's far greater than you need, it then limits the amount of space that you can find around town. You want a 35,000 square foot building, and you're going to replace that with that was a 10,000 square foot building. How about
That's
being more?
not true.
It's not true.
It was 16,000 square feet, and in 1997, in the plan of 1997, that wasn't me.
Right,
That
no,
wasn't,
I'm
I don't
blaming
think
you.
any of us.
Right.
But in 1997, the town, as in a year-long process, determined that Public Works needed a new place that was substantially larger. That plan stood for 11 years until it was reiterated in the 2008 Plan of Conservation Development, which specifically placed Public Works at Tabor, and that was a decision reached by
So,
everybody.
let me ask
And
you
I
this.
wasn't part
Why-
of that either.
listen, I'm not blaming you. Why then at 2008
Well, no,
wasn't that plan?
you are, Fred.
No,
I've been
no,
reading.
no. Listen, why hasn't that? Look, you owe us an explanation. You are the second selectman. You're not one of us. We're just
I got-
taxpayers. Okay?
which is why I'm here.
Okay. So my point to you is this: so in 2008, which is 5 years ago or 4 years ago, okay, but probably closer to 6, if you do the math. Why wasn't it put there? It wasn't put there.
Because the dump was only capped 4 months ago.
No, listen.
And until the dump was capped, these people down here had to deal with all
So
this
let me
other
ask you a question.
stuff
Why
for
would
the
you have
bulky
ripped down the
waste.
Public Works building? Why not wait So
That was a decision made by the RTM, and you have to ask the RTM members for why they didn't do both at once. But I wasn't on the RTM a
How
couple
did
years
you
ago
vote?
when they made that.
What's that?
You
know what?
Oh, we weren't on the
Listen,
RTM.
no, but I was there, and I'll tell you why. What happened was, Board of Finance put all capital projects on hold. I explained this, and they just keep ignoring it, but this is exactly what happened. All capital projects were on hold. When stimulus money was coming out, the fire commission, or the building committee for the fire department, was specifically Jack Ahern and the town engineer, went to the RTN. They said, we have an opportunity to get stimulus money for the firehouse, but we need to be shovel ready. What does that mean? We need to have plans in place. So the RTM asked at the committee level, do we need to have public works? They wanted 400 and some thousand for plans for fire department, 375 or 350 for the public works. They said, do we need to spend the money on public works now if all we're doing is applying for stimulus money to see if we get it? The answer was no. If you get the stimulus money, you vote to go ahead with the fire department, we can then approve the money for the public works, and we can make a decision to build public works the way it should have been done. That was it. So the RTM said, why spend the money, 300, if this is just to see if we're going to get government money? Okay, that was the thinking. So what happened was, in August they found out they're not going to receive any stimulus money, but they had the money in place for the fire department. So the building committee continued moving forward, and town hall continued to move forward with the firehouse. It came time to, okay, now we have a set of plans to put out the bid. All right, let's build the firehouse. Well, we don't have anything to do with, for a year this went on, went through.
So
without
someone dropped the
anybody-
ball.
Yes, yeah, town hall.
you're saying, they dropped the ball.
The leadership, well, lack of leadership is what happened. And so nobody came and approved the money for the firehouse. It wasn't the RTM's fault. The RTM was saying, why spend $350,000 if we don't know what we're gonna do yet? But for a year, they knew exactly what they were going to do, build the firehouse, but nobody came forward and said, we need to have an answer for Public Works. So that's why Public Works is now sitting down there. It's going to cost us over $1 million in a temporary facility, and we're now arguing about this. And you know what? I said in the last selectmen's meeting that they keep falling back on this matrix, which I'll go over that matrix with anybody. It is flawed. Okay? Okay.
Pointed everything out step by step, how flawed it is.
It's flawed. Now they keep falling back on the plan of conservation and development. Well, you know what? The plan of conservation and development before that, I believe, said the best use of this property was for residential. But then we go ahead, and then we went ahead and we took the property.
That's not true.
Okay, we didn't? It did not say that? Okay. Well, if it's not true, then I stand corrected, but I believe it did. That was one of the arguments. Right? And then we were trying to say, well, now we don't want it. We gave it approvals for residential. It was in our, I think, moderate size development for residential.
Moderate? 354 units.
In the plan of conservation development, not what the developer came forward.
Oh yeah, POCD, no, but POCD
It's all history. It doesn't have any effect on what's going to happen going
POCD
forward.
specifically references Public Works at Tabor in many, many different places and talks about the need
But
to
you
get
keep
going.
following with this one. But I'm talking about you keep using that as a reason to justify it. But like I said, the
Oh,
impact
no,
to
I'm
the
just
neighborhood,
answering the question as to whether or not
impact
this
to
is
the
just
neighborhood,
got hooked
impact to the taxpayer, and impact to Public Works does not justify putting it down there.
Well, you keep pointing to 2008. What about 2012? You're surrounded by residents right here against it. What is your response to them?
My response to the residents that are here this morning, and if you happen to live here, the town is trying to address all of the issues that have been raised. All.
Okay, could you just tell me real quickly what the reason we need to build it so quickly is we're spending $1 million renting out
No,
of it?
we're not spending
Okay, then what
we're
is the
spending
reason?
10 grand a month.
Okay, so
on
the
rent.
reason
was
that's why we want to
600,000.
build a public works soon because we don't want to pay the money up.
Well, we have to build a public works
Because?
facility because the current rented one is, I don't think that it's safe,
Okay.
and it's not a long-term solution.
So
We're
that's
also
what-
currently violating a couple different regulations of the state because, for example, we wash the salt off outdoors,
Okay.
and that's not kosher by the state DEP. Also, I'll tell you, in the current facility on 139, on March 13th of last year, the door got jammed. There's one door in which all the plows are parked, and they're parked literally like 6 inches apart, these $500,000 machines. But the door got jammed and wouldn't get up. And I submit to you that if that happened in a snowstorm, we would have to ram the door open so that we could get the plows out, and then we have to go pay for a new door because the rental facility is not sufficient for what is determined to be safe and reasonable use, which is in one door, not the other, evidently. And as to the 34,000 square foot recommendation to build the property, I know Public Works because it's been explained to me many times, but one of the things that's been explained to me is that you have to warehouse these big expensive vehicles for a couple of reasons. One, environmentally, if you start up a cold diesel truck in the cold, it takes 15 minutes of black smoke belching out to warm it up as opposed to keeping it in a warehouse. Also, it's a $4+ million fleet of vehicles. You know, the truck, and actually, I say big trucks, but most of them are pickup trucks that are exactly that size.
$500,000 pickup truck?
We have a couple of $500,000 dump trucks, the bigger ones, with the big, and
Andy, you're talking about safety of public works, that they're not safe where they're resigning right now. How about safety of school? What if something happens in school? Why don't we spend the money there for example, walls? If you want to do lockdown, there's no wall to lock down. Why don't we spend some of that money, not all of it, some of that money to take care of our kids that are going to run the country and
I
run the town?
support that 100%, but I didn't come here this morning necessarily to talk about
Well,
schools.
it relates to each other. I know you don't want to talk about it.
But
But it's the money that could be spent in a better place.
He's saying the same thing I think we're all saying is, now here's what we don't
the
see on
town
the
needs
part
to build a
administration.
Department
Let's
of
see him
Public
taking
Works
care of the
facility.
people.
The town needs to take
Trucks,
care of the kids too.
wash the trucks,
Oh, I agree.
make all the roads better. What about the people? How it affects them?
I agree, and
If you agree, follow it, please. If you agree, you just keep saying I agree, but you're not doing it.
but you also understand that we don't get to tell the Board of Education how to spend money at their schools.
You could help spending that money or just offering
I
that money
agree.
to them.
They
don't
haven't
have the
asked-
$60,000 to
I
take care
agree,
of that.
but they haven't asked for anything. All they've asked, you folks who've done the Walsh soundproofing sort of issue, might agree with me that the Board of Education right now may not be managing its buildings very well because they don't seem to come up with answers that satisfy anybody. Okay, but that's
the story of this town, Andy, with all due respect. There's no good answer.
well. See,
for it.
I'm going to reject that only because I was given a plan of conservation development, and I was given all this information, and I've had an interest in public works. I'm sorry, in Tabor. Freudian slip. I've had an interest in Tabor, and then after I started thinking about the dump closure plan, because there has been a dump closure plan in place for 15, 16, 17 years. And that finally gets activated now that we've capped the dump, that there's no more garbage going into that property, which is a very good thing for this town. But that property still contaminates all the neighborhood around it, including this marsh right here. And the dump closure plan is the only plan right now that is funded and approved by the town, and for the most part, it's digging a couple of retention ditches right down in the southeast corner or southwest corner over here. But my experience with this town is that the town will get cheap as to the extras, and right now, extra is anything beyond digging a retention pond for the chemicals that ooze off the north side of the dump, and we really don't have a lot of wiggle room on the south side of the dump where it's also oozing out into the marshes. But it goes right into that culvert, which runs right into the stream, right into this marsh, and that's been a priority of mine prior to Public Works Building Committee deciding that, oh yeah, this is the spot. They came up with that decision in January, but quite frankly, the Solid Waste Management Commission, I've been working with them far longer than that on this dump remediation plan. But my experience in this town is that the town's not going to go in and start bulldozing 77 acres and getting rid of concrete barriers and chunks and stuff like that, because there's no priority for this 77-acre scar. It's a 77-acre scar is what this property is. And in my mind, it will remain that way as a deprioritized thing to the detriment of this neighborhood in many, many ways. And I, frankly,
kind of
I
like
don't.
it that way.
I'm not tired.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
We do, yeah. It's,
things
who's the scar to? It's not a scar to us. It doesn't bother any of us.
Two things I wanted to
I've
do.
had
and I'd
moms
like
tell
to
me
s-
that I've had many moms tell me that they won't let their kids go on the property, and I know how heavily the
That's what we
property
have
is
Full
used.
Park for. It's just as close.
Two things I want to address.
So you would rather leave it in its
Because
current state?
Andy said one thing, I just need to correct him, because he said to the woman before that it's not costing us $1 million to have Public Works down there. The reason why, and when he's just talking about the month per rent. We first allocated $600,000 to send them down there for 3 years. That was to cover the rent plus the cost of the move, and to fit up the building to our needs. That was we're gonna go over the 3 years, okay? Plus, we have to put the building back to the condition, what we brought in, we have to move out. So that's where, I'm coming up with over the $1 million. Plus, you mentioned the violations of DEP, which we're facing $25,000 per day per violation right now. That's what we just got the notice on December 5th from DEP. So I think the $1 million might be a little bit, we're probably going to exceed that by time we're all said and done. And you said the town isn't going to go in there and start bulldozing and taking out stuff. Well, maybe I think what a lot of these people are asking, well, maybe just ask the town to stop dumping in there. All right? I mean, you keep calling it a scar. It was. I'd like you to elaborate on how it was a scar. Like some people said, nature's taking it back. How is it a scar?
Nature's taking it back?
Yeah, see, here's the.
I
just want to
Come walk with
wait,
us on the prettiest part of the trail, and let's stand and look at those Jersey barriers jutting out of the pretty nature. It's not pretty
you
nature.
said it's a
It's
scar.
invasive space.
It's a scar.
Wait a
all right.
minute,
Listen.
Those of us that live here have seen the deer and the turkeys
Yeah.
and the coyote and the fox in our neighborhoods that come off that travel in and out of that property. Those of us that are concerned about environmental stuff, and it might seem trivial from a financial and from a town perspective, but I care about that type of stuff, and something's going to happen with all that wildlife once you go in there and start bulldozing and everything.
I have a question too.
Pretty thing to look at.
Which is why it was designed to be located a quarter mile from anyone's residence and out of sight.
Still on this property that you're trying to say, oh, we're gonna put this park and it's gonna be beautiful, we're gonna do all this remediation. And you're gonna put Public Works Department right there in the middle of all that beauty.
Right.
There's nothing beautiful about diesel trucks, there's nothing beautiful about burying diesel tanks, salt domes, any of those kinds of things.
And you said one thing twice that bothers me, and I think it's going to bother everybody else. You said one thing twice. You said that the town does not like to spend extra on Tabor.
I'm just saying historically, I haven't seen the town.
I completely
spend
agree
money.
with you. You are correct. Now, I went to that meeting before Christmas, and they said that they were going to put the Public Works Department down there first, and then add the ball fields and all the stuff that's going to hide Public Works. To me, that's an extra. And I have a feeling that that's extra is not going to want to be spent by the town, and we're never going to see
And
it.
it's not part of the budget now.
It won't be.
So if,
Or even.
I've never heard anyone say that it's not going to be, but I'd like to hear someone say that we will actually see it. And we won't, because we know you're going to force it down there. It's obvious. It's painfully obvious. But
Well, I think before.
I had a job to do to vote when this issue came before the Board of Selectmen, and I put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into this decision, and I stand by the decision that I made, and I think that I'm well versed. I happen to have a whole lot of information in my head, and I don't communicate it as well as I should, which is why there's a gap in the information, and that's my issue, and that's my problem, quite frankly, is I have to try to explain it to all my constituents, because I represent every single one of them. I'll tell you with regard to the ball fields issue, I understand that that's being addressed at the Board of Recreation on Monday night. Okay, I think that they're picking that up and moving with it somehow, some way. I was told of 7:30 on Monday night or something like that, and I don't know. But it's my thought that all the other stuff is possible if you make an investment in critical infrastructure in the town. And if we don't make the investment in the critical infrastructure here, this property will remain as it is, which I think is, as I said, I think that it's a scar. And one of the reasons I say that is we have 4 different trails that all stop right before they get to Tabor. Now, not even the naturalists and the environmentalists and whatnot, they don't. There's a reason they stopped the trail. The reason the Shoreline Greenway Trail is here today is to try to get support for cutting a trail just right across.
But you've
right
been doing it
across
for
the
10
top,
years, you said.
which happens to be a very beautiful trail. And there are going to be huge sections of this, like 30, 40 acres of this, that are going to be retained as essentially wild. There are parts of this property that were not stripped of 10 or 20 feet of topsoil, and there are parts of this property that were too wet to go dumping in all the Jersey barriers and all that stuff. So there are parts of this property that are worth saving in the state they're in. Most of the property in the gut of it, when you walk down that dirt and rock boulevard right down the middle, those are all invasive species covering up asphalt mountains.
Andy, when you started this, you were talking about making the vote with the Board of Selectmen. That was back on November 8th. When is this going to move to the Board of Finance? When is this going to get, is it going to stay stalling like this?
The Board of Finance,
Approving the $325,000?
I got that, and then it goes on to the RTM. I
Right.
think that's
When's
in
it going to
process.
move forward? Doesn't UNC have to move that to
I
the Board
think
of
so.
Finance?
The special meeting for finance
Right.
next week
Monday.
is being done. They only wanted to load up the Covanta Bristol thing because, quite frankly, we need quick action on that because of the time frames that they set up in the Bristol agreement. That we kind of got extended into January because our process of government takes a month and a half or 2 months to get approvals instead of other towns. So I would guess, I don't know because I don't set the agenda for the Board of Finance, but I would guess then that this might pop up at the next, which I think is the regular meeting at the end of January.
January
And,
28th.
and if it gets approval from the Board of Finance, then the appropriation has to go on to the RTM. And I believe that it would go before both the Administrative Services and Ways and Means committees. And so we have the opportunity, folks, because it's not a done deal. And I want to be real clear about where I am voting as one of 3 guys on a board because that's the job that we were given. Thumbs up or thumbs down on wherever it was. But the democratic process still includes a whole lot of, because we don't have any money to do anything right now, but the question before the Board of Finance and the RTM right now is $325,000 for a design build. And the design build is to be, my understanding is the nature of a design build is to spend the money to design it at a property that's been selected, which is why the Board of Selectmen selected on November 8th. And just to finish that point, there is not an appropriation, nor is there any pending request for the actual money to build anything, but that would come back in the same sort of process, Selectmen, Finance, and RTM.
I just have one question.
And I just have to say this because I told Reverend Myers that I would. There's a funeral that starts here in 13 minutes, folks.
One question. In your analysis, obviously you think this is the best choice. What would be Plan B to you? If you didn't do it here, where was the next place you would put it?
My second choice was the Cherry Hill Glass over on Elm Street.
And would that cost more, or just be more?
The purchase price that was offered to the town was $7.5 million.
So that's our option. Maybe we can go for that. Have an assessment.
It could.
A special
And
one-time.
And the plan was done for it.
That property, I believe, is the one Superfund site in town. It's bordered by a wetland that we own. On the north and on the east sides. And they've got extremely narrow streets down there, and as opposed to no houses within a quarter mile of the facility, there are about 400 or 500 houses within a quarter mile of the facility. Okay.
Mr. Campbell, do you live in Branford?
Yes.
Yeah.
Couple
blocks right
elected
up
here.
this way. Across from a town facility that contaminated my yard during the surge.
You don't live in
Not here.
No. But I ate a lot of surge and a lot of gasoline, and it was the town's gasoline and oil and other people's too.
Do we have any idea on an overall estimate for the ball fields, the infrastructure, the fixing of this roads, and the public works facility?
I can tell you the numbers that, the only numbers that I'm comfortable with. Jamie's still here, he can verify this, but the 3 selectmen, and it didn't get reported out of that November 8th meeting, but the 3 selectmen discussed a price of $7 million for the building, and that's one number. There have been various discussions about the off-site improvements here and there, and quite frankly, I think the numbers are all a little squishy because the engineer hasn't quite attached prices to them, because we have a state highway up here and the DOT is nowhere on this process because they don't do anything quickly at all. And so the numbers that I'm aware of right now are $7 million for the building, zero for the acquisition costs.
The 20 million we spent.
Just so we're clear, there is no.
Be clear, be
But it's
honest.
not okay. Fine. Honestly, there.
Spent 20 million.
But that's not true. We spent $13.875 million.
The bills aren't finished yet. You know that, Andy.
You had to finance that.
They still got a lawsuit.
Correct. And we also have 2 lawsuits out there that the current thinking right now in town hall
wasn't
is
around
that,
for that. He wasn't
we're going to recover substantial sums upwards of $3 or $4 million. That's the current thinking right now on the recovery suits. The
Let's
town
get
has
out of here,
made an
guys.
offer of settlement.
We gotta get out of here.
For one of the recovery suits for $3 million, which indicates that's what we expect to receive.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.